Today, it's time for another age-old grudge match updated for a modern generation. It's the third generation Hyundai i10 versus the third generation Maruti Suzuki Swift. Well, strictly speaking, it's called the Hyundai Grand i10 Nios because Hyundai loves extending the name of this car with every new generation, but you'll have to forgive me if I just call it the i10 a few times over the course of this comparison. Now, Maruti Suzuki insists that the Swift is not a competitor for this car, that it's a little bit above, but we beg to differ. And that's why we brought the two together to tell you which one you should put your money on. Okay, first things first, I'll admit this story is a little bit late. We shot it some time ago, so apologies for that. But before we go any further, tell us in the comments which one you prefer, the Grand i10 Nios or the Swift, and why. And as ever, we hope you're subscribed to the Autocar India channel and have clicked the bell icon to keep yourself notified. The Nios builds on the Grand i10's tall boy look but has some more in-your-face details like the big cascade grille and a lot of chrome, especially at the rear. The Swift 2 sticks to its tried and tested formula of a wide base and a narrower glass house with a floating effect for the roof. It's clear, however, that it has grown considerably from the previous car. But are they as inviting on the inside? Let's start with the Hyundai. The interior of the new i10 impresses you the moment you step inside, and that's because they've really upped the premium quotient inside here. Just look at that dashboard. It's got so many shapes and colors and textures. I love those rotary AC vents. They feel like they belong in a much more expensive car, as does this binnacle that houses the 8-inch touchscreen and the instruments. The instruments, by the way, are part digital, and it doesn't feel like a cheap afterthought as it does in some other cars. And even the steering, it feels really premium and really nice to hold, like it's come from a more expensive car. I particularly like the fabric upholstery on these seats. It feels really upmarket. It's even got a stripe down the center, and I think, quite frankly, it works a little bit better than even some artificial leather upholstered seats. Some people, though, won't like the idea that the seat doesn't have an adjustable headrest. Now, this 8-inch touchscreen may not have all the connected tech of this car's elder sibling, the Venue, but it is still the latest version of Hyundai's touchscreen infotainment system. And to that end, it works really slickly and smoothly and has a lot of features. It even has a really cool feature where you can run the car's rear view camera feed permanently to serve as an alternative to the actual rear view mirror. And of course, Hyundai is always known for throwing in a segment first feature, and in this case, it's a wireless phone charging pad. However, I think that a lot of users might just end up using that as storage space because there isn't a whole lot in the center console. Yep, there's two big cup holders here and a little niche for your phone, but that's about it. Instead, what you get is a shelf over there and rather big door pockets. The Nios has set the bar pretty high for the interior, but the Swift does things its own way. The interior of the Swift goes out of its way to give you that sporty feel, and it all starts with this all-black color scheme. Now, I know this might not be to everybody's taste, but I don't mind it too much. I wish they had a few more brighter colored accents to liven things up, although this grey trim on the steering wheel and the dashboard is not too bad. The dashboard itself is raked back and you get these huge hooded instruments which also look very sporty, and this flat bottom steering wheel which is really nice to hold. Even the seats, they are bigger than the ones in the i10 and they hold you snugly in place, which is a nice touch. That aside, it's also a very practical cabin with lots of storage spaces, big door bins, a nice little cubby area down here, although I wish the cup holders were a little bit larger, and even a place underneath the handbrake to store your mobile phone. However, this 7-inch touchscreen isn't as slick or as intuitive as the one in the Hyundai, and Suzuki's new SmartPlay Studio system works a lot better. And yes, while the Grand i10 does have a segment first feature in the form of its wireless charger, the Swift has one of its own, full LED headlamps. Apart from their respective segment first features, the two cars are very closely matched and rather well loaded up, each getting Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, LED daytime running lamps, auto climate control and power folding wing mirrors. On the safety front, both get the compulsory requirement of dual airbags, ABS, seatbelt and speed alerts, and rear parking sensors. Additionally, they also get rear view cameras. As for crash test ratings, the Swift scored 2 stars in the global NCAP test back in 2018, whereas the Grand i10 Nios has yet to be crash tested by the organization. Before we hop into the back seats, let's take a look at the boots. They're very closely matched, with the i10 getting to 60 litres and the Swift to 68 litres, but both will require you to haul your bags over the high rear bumper. Now to the back seats. Well, they've really done an incredible job of the Grand i10's back seat. And it's not just in terms of space, which of course there is plenty of, both knee room and headroom, but also just the sense of airiness thanks to these huge windows and the amount of support that this seat offers. You also get much larger door bins in the back of this car than you do in the Swift, and of course, there's that rear AC vent. So how does the Swift's back seat compare? On its own, the Swift's back seat is really not all that bad. It seems to be the wider of the two and headroom is plentiful. However, I think the i10 might just have a little edge when it comes to knee room, and it is definitely the most supportive seat. What's more, you don't get a great sense of space back here thanks to the black color and the fact that these windows are very small, and there is no quarter glass thanks to the trick door handle of the back doors. Score 1 for the Nios, but in petrol manual hatchbacks like these, it's likely more prudent to check out what the driving experience is like. The Grand i10 Nios still has the relatively tall boy design like its predecessors, and therefore you get that slightly taller seating position. However, this time it doesn't feel quite that much because of the really high instrument binnacle in front of you. Still, what remains a hallmark of this car is excellent visibility all round. On the dynamics front, again, it follows in the same vein as previous i10s in that it's not one for really sharp handling, and that's okay. It's tuned more for ease of use and comfort. It has, however, been improved ever so slightly compared to the previous Grand i10. So yes, while the suspension is soft, body control is just a little bit better now, and though the steering still feels rather disconnected, it does at least have a little bit of weight to it and returns quite nicely to the center. It's only once you get to considerably higher speeds that you realize that it doesn't give you all that much confidence. It's worth noting now that Hyundai's Kappa 2 engine has now been upgraded to meet BS6 emissions norms, and that has had an effect on the way it drives. This 1.2-litre Kappa 2 petrol engine has never been the strongest in its class, and with the transition to BS6, they seem to have dulled it just a little bit further. Part throttle responses, in particular from low RPMs, tend to be really sluggish, and that can catch you out when you want to make an overtaking maneuver, especially out on the highway, but even in the city as well. And though it is very refined at low revs, once you get it to about 3000 RPM, you can hear a surprising amount of it inside the cabin. What doesn't help the cause is that the gear ratios are quite tall, likely in the interest of better fuel economy. One thing you absolutely cannot fault though is the lightness of the clutch and gear shift action. It makes shifting an absolute joy in the i10. So all in all, this powertrain is adequate, but I really wish it had a bit more punch. But when it comes to being nice to drive, the Swift has always had an edge. You notice a big difference between the Swift and the i10 the moment you get behind the wheel of the Swift after the i10. It's an altogether lower, sportier and more cocooned driving experience, and that's always been characteristic of the Swift, hasn't it? Visibility at the front and the sides is not too bad, but there is a bit of a blind spot that you get at the back because of that thick C-pillar. But that's something you'll soon overlook once you really get going. Where the Swift really outshines the i10 is in the way the chassis has been set up. They've managed to find a really good blend of ride quality and impeccable body control. It's a shame then that the one thing that lets this package down is the steering. Now, while the steerings in early Swifts were known for their weightiness and their communicative feel, this latest third generation car, well, they've over-assisted the electronic power steering. And though it really is nice and easy to use at low speeds, you get very little in the way of feedback from the road, and the worst part is it doesn't return freely to center once you've turned it. Things improve a great deal when you're going faster, but at low speeds, dare I say it, the Hyundai has the better steering of these two cars. Wow. But as a complete package, when you combine the seating position, the road holding, the confidence it gives you at high speeds, the Swift does come across as the more fun to drive package, for sure. But a complete package includes the engine and, well, about that. Now I want to tell you what the Swift's 1.2 litre K12 petrol engine is like, and well, we have been impressed by it in the past, but today there's a problem. You see, this test car is quite old. It's been around since when the Swift was launched in India, and that means the engine under this hood is BS4 rated. And if you were to go into a Maruti Arena dealership today and order a Swift, it would come with a BS6 engine. And to top it off, Maruti didn't have a BS6 compliant car to give us to test. But this is Autocar India, and we like to be thorough about these things. So we found someone who'd just bought a BS6 compliant Swift and asked if we could borrow it to drive it back to back with the Nios. And thankfully, they said yes. So now I'm at the wheel of the BS6 version of the Maruti Suzuki Swift Petrol. You'll have to bear with me because this is a lower spec model than the BS4 version I was driving earlier. But that's not what's important. What's important is what it's like to drive. Now initially I was worried that it would have become a bit of a dead duck in the transition from BS4 to BS6 and that all its power would have been sapped away, but I'm happy to report that that's really not the case. It still feels very drivable and peppy enough. Okay, some of that low down pep, very low down off the line has been sapped just a little bit. So yes, the moment you put your foot down doesn't take off quite as sprightly as the old one used to. But at no point do you feel that this is lacking in power or lacking in pep. It's still very eager off the line, and if anything, it feels like it's gotten a little bit quieter in the transition. And that's only a good thing, right? Small, nimble, premium, affordable, practical do-it-alls is what these two cars are. In fact, so broad is their spectrum of abilities that it makes picking a winner that much harder. The Swift remains a great family car, and though it's gotten a bit softer, it does still have a hint of fun in the way it drives. It's certainly got the strongest engine even after the BS6 upgrade. In fact, on the whole, there's not a lot to fault with the Swift, apart from perhaps its price, which at 7.58 lakh rupees is almost 40,000 rupees more than the Hyundai. It's just that the Grand i10 Nios does most things a little bit better. No, it's not geared for fun driving and it's got a slightly weak powertrain, but as a city car, it's quite excellent. It's got the edge on space, it's got a modern looking interior and an impressive equipment list. But most of all, it feels premium and inviting. And that your money, a reasonable 7.19 lakh rupees in this top spec Asta guise, has really gone far. In today's world of SUV this and crossover that, the classic family hatchback has to work hard to win you over. Luckily, the Grand i10 Nios does that effortlessly.